Empire, 6th century. With the fall of the Roman Empire and the rise of Christianity and the Roman Catholic Church, the history of birth control becomes harder to follow in Europe because of, especially, its prohibition by the Church. In the Eastern Roman Empire, 6th century Byzantine court physician Edio of Amida adapted from soreness the use of astringent, fatty, or cooling ointments to close the womb and prevent sperm from entering. He also is on record as counseling men to wash their genitals with vinegar or brine before intercourse, and vinegar, with its high level of acidity, has proven to be a very effective spermicide. However, he was also highly influenced by church teachings and particularly recommended the rhythm method, having intercourse during a safe period at the beginning or end of menstruation. Ibid. The Islamic world 10th century AD Avicenna canon. Muslim physician Avicenna included 20 different birth control methods in his canon of medicine. The Islamic world was also not affected by the Christian condemnation of birth control practices or methods, and Arabic medical writers drew on Indian, Greek, and Roman knowledge of the subject. In the 1st century, Avicenna included in his canon of medicine 20 different contraceptive methods along with his commentary on their effectiveness. He advised coating the penis with white bleed or pitch and putting the pulp of a pomegranate mixed with alum into the vagina. He also recommended vaginal suppositories made of willow leaves or colocynth pulp, mandrake, iron dross, sulfur, scammony, and cabbage seed. He also believed that inserting pepper into the coitus prevented conception. Bilal. Avicenna's text was the main source of medical information relied on by the Western world until well into the 19th century, and Norbert Himes, the pioneer historian of contraception, noted as late as 1936 that Avicenna was as well advanced as many modern physicians in understanding that traditional contraceptives could actually be effective. Ibid. Spain, 13th century. On September 13, 1276, a man named Peter of Spain was elected pope and assumed his new name, John XXI. Born in Lisbon, Portugal, he studied at the University of Paris and went on to teach medicine at the University of Siena in Italy. Before he became pope, he wrote a medical treatise called Thesaurus Pauperum, Treasury of the Poor, in the 1270s while serving as physician to Pope Gregory X. This text may be the greatest single source of information about the practical methods of birth control that exists from the Middle Ages. He first advocates sexual restraint. He advised men to place a hemlock plaster on the testicles before coitus, which was supposed to decrease desire. The earliest known medical description of a male condom is by the Italian anatomist Gabriele Fallopius in 1564. He was an early authority on syphilis and recommended that a linen sheath covering the penis could be used specifically as an anti-venereal disease precaution. Gordon. This linen sheath was soaked in a chemical solution and then allowed to dry before being used. It was big enough to cover the glans of the penis and was held in place with a ribbon collar. Casanova testing condoms. Giovanni Giacomo Casanova was one of the more famous early users of condoms in the 18th century, and he had various names for them, including English riding cap. Other early types of condoms were made out of dried animal skins that were sewn together. One of the more famous users of animal skin condoms was Giovanni Giacomo Casanova, 1725? 1798. According to his memoir, Casanova lists 116 lovers by name but leaves nameless hundreds more women and girls he had sex with, ranging from ages 9 to 70 and from every social status, from chambermaids to noble women. He claimed to use half a lemon as a penis cap, and he admitted to using condoms and had a variety of names for them, including including English riding coat. He reportedly liked to blow them up to test them to make sure they would not leak, and he compared his use of animal skin condoms to shutting himself up in a piece of dead skin below. The condom was revolutionized when Charles Goodyear and Thomas Hancock invented the process to vulcanize rubber in 1833, 1834. The earliest rubber condoms had a seam and were about as thick as a bicycle inner tube collier. However, these types of condoms covered only the glands of the penis and could be easily lost or were too tight, constricting the penis. In 1912, inventor Julius Fromm invented a new process for making condoms by dipping glass molds into a raw rubber solution. This process was called cement dipping and required the addition of benzene or gasoline to make the plastic liquid ibid. Then, latex was invented in 1920 and condoms made from this material were finer and thinner and much cheaper to produce. Most condoms are still made out of latex today. Margaret Sanger, 1916 to 1960s Comstock law symbol. Birth control was technically illegal in the early 20th century, so some women had to turn to the black market for women's protection devices, or even turn to using Lysol as a vaginal douche. At the end of the 18th century in the United States, various birth control methods and devices, including condoms, douching syringes and solutions, vaginal sponges, diaphragms, and cervical sponges, could be purchased openly from mail-order houses and pharmacies. In 1873, the U.S. government passed a broad anti-obscenity bill called the Comstock Law, which was meant to outlaw obscenity in general but also criminalized the use and sale of any and all birth control devices. Because of this law, birth control had to be purchased on the black market. Some birth control devices had to be relabeled and sold as women's protection devices, and some women even turned to using the popular household disinfectant Lysol as a vaginal douche to prevent conception, which remained popular throughout the 1920s and 1930s tone. It was into this climate that Margaret Sanger arrived in the early 20th century. Her passion was providing universal birth control. A visiting nurse in the poorest sections of New York City in the early decades of the 20th century, Sanger opened the first makeshift birth control clinic in a tenement storefront in the Brownsville neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York, with her sister Ethel Chesler. She and her sister instructed 8 women at a time on how to use over-the-counter birth control, including condoms, suppositories, and rubber pessaries.